Thank you, Peter. So as Peter mentioned, we're going to cover, I'm going to cover in this case, in the first part of this session, the Central and Eastern Europe, with a special focus on Russia. Why Russia? Because as some of you who are already have established your business in Russia know that it's a very challenging market compared to other Eastern European markets. And the second part of the session is going to be dedicated to the Q&A, where me and Peter are going to answer your specific questions. So let me just go straight to the slides. Central and Eastern Europe, we already pretty much covered that. I'm going to talk you through some of the market data, the high-level market insights, but the main focus of this presentation is going to be on the cultural aspects, because at Google we believe that success in each market is basically linked to being focused on the customer. So I really want you to leave today with a better understanding of who your Eastern European and Russian customer is, and what are the specific behavioral aspects that you should be aware of when you're entering those markets. Hopefully I can tell you something new, something interesting about the Eastern European Russian consumer that you haven't heard before. And main focus of this presentation is going to be on Russia. As I mentioned, is a market with most challenging audience, most challenging landscape to penetrate. But speaking of the Eastern Europe, it's a very attractive set of markets, very diverse. We're talking about 20 different countries there with partially shared historical, cultural, political views with the Western European countries, but at the same time it's also really influenced by Russia. It has its Slavic cultures, traditions, languages, the Byzantium, we've all heard of that. And at the moment, why we're interested in Central and Eastern Europe is not only because of its territory, it's not only because it's a very large audience that you can grasp with your business. It's also very fast developing. From one side, it's actually catching up quickly with Western Europe in terms of e-commerce, in terms of the purchasing power, and from the other side, it's also a set of emerging markets where the growth is still very high. So I really wanted to outline, the most important of the Eastern European countries that you'll be dealing with when you're going to Eastern Europe. And I think it's very important to understand that when we are talking about the online penetration, it can be a little bit misleading. For instance, we can see that the Baltics have very high internet penetration. Estonia, for instance, with 80%. But when you look at the actual population, the number of people that you're, addressing in those markets, you realize that a country like Poland and Russia, and Turkey, for instance, that has the lowest internet penetration rate across Europe, it's 44%. But when you're talking in terms of when you look at the population, you realize that it's a massive audience. That is not to be left out. So this is part of the reason why we find Poland also very interesting. It's an incredibly interesting market. E-commerce is growing there 24% year on year. It's comparable to Brazil. The purchasing power is also experienced positive growth. There are many potential consumers there already that you want to address while expanding your business in Eastern Europe. And the reason we're speaking about Russia, so there are 140 83 people online in Russia, and it's a challenging market. And I hope I'm going to give you a little bit of a cultural perspective that will help you to really have this customer focus in mind and be successful. As you all know, the homegrown companies in Russia are very successful. So this is part of the reason, because they understand the culture and the diversity in Russia. But to start with the Russian audience, we also have to understand that there are so many Russian speakers in the world, and in this global community, it's becoming increasingly crucial, increasingly more important to address the languages, to target the communities rather than nation states. So to give you a little bit of a scope here, there are the former Soviet countries that also are emerging markets, fast-growing mobile adoption, fast-growing e-commerce. And for instance, you have a country like Kazakhstan. There are about 17 million people there, and they pretty much all speak Russian. So you have 3.5 million native Russian speakers in Germany. So before even going to Russia and starting thinking of establishing your business there, you can actually already grasp a really large audience just by targeting the language. So you can think about that. But for Russia itself, it's quite a positive outlook. So the economy has been developing in a positive way. There are Olympics, Winter Olympics right now in Sochi, and you probably saw the opening ceremony. And the unemployment level is reducing, and the mobile internet penetration is growing. I think this is probably the most interesting thing for us to know, that what we've seen in the developing, in the emerging markets for the past years is that frequently when there are limitations in the broadband, in infrastructure, people tend to adopt or get more accustomed with smartphones as a way of a rescue from the infrastructure limitations, so they can still be online because people want to be online. So what we see in Russia is, at the moment, about 1/3 of the Russian population owns a smartphone, and about 95% of all the smartphone owners have considered doing purchases online, and 29% of them say that they have already this experience of buying products online. And there is a number of very big e-commerce players in Russia as well. So we're addressing 22 million online consumers. The e-commerce players I was mentioning just now, there are about 30,000 of them in Russia at the moment, and 17.5 billion is the estimated value of e-commerce in 2013. Now, all of this looks very, very nice. Also, the fact that companies like Amazon and eBay have opened their premises in Russia recently, so they're all active in Russia as well. A company, ASUS, was mentioned yesterday. So last year, ASUS also started their activities in Russia. So this looks very positive, but at the same time, I want to ask you a question. What is that estimated volume of e-commerce in, say, in Germany? Does anybody have any idea? No? Just a wild guess? Anyone?
100 billion?
No, well, not quite as much, but it's 35 actually in 2011. So it could be, approaching, well, not 100, but still it's significantly higher, the number. And also, if you look at the UK, it's about 80 billion, and US to 202. So when you put it in the perspective, comparing it with developed countries, you realize that there is a long way to go there. And one of the questions that you might be asking, especially with the retail business, how many retail companies are represented here? All right, so quite a few. I'd say that there are two major factors that are negatively impacting the flourishing and the further development of the Russian e-commerce. So it's the logistics that can be a pain. It's mainly state-owned Russian Post, and it is known for its inefficiencies and cause a lot of headache to retailers. Now, there is, I guess it's a little bit of a Russian culture as well, and I think Peter might concur as to our experiences that, the Russian way of doing things historically is to be creative and find a workaround. So what we see in those e-commerce players, the largest ones, like Ozon.ru, like Kupi VIP, and La Moda, they actually have developed their own distribution channels, right, to resolve this delivery issue. And Ozon, actually, they have even created their own delivery service that they're currently offering to third parties. It's called O-Courier. So all that to still reach those consumers eager to buy online. A second pain that you might encounter in Russia is the aversion to electronic payments. Now, it also has partially a cultural base. People do not trust transactions. So there was a research made by TNS in 2012 among the population of the larger cities. That is actually the consumer that purchases the most online. And although it's been found that over 80% of all the respondents are familiar, or they already own a credit card and the debit card, or they're familiar with that and they're planning to have it, either a credit or debit card, they still prefer to pay by cash on delivery. So why is that? Actually, in 2010, 2011, there have been several failures from big online players, and people simply don't really trust the online transactions, which is not very uncommon for consumers also across to Europe. But how do you work around this issue? So how do you adapt to the Russian creative way and find a solution to that? So there are a number of online and the payment methods that you should consider when you're establishing a business. In Russia, there is the web money, there is the Kiwi. So you can always think of the major e-commerce players. They always use several payment methods, and they make them available on their sites, so that your consumers have various choices for payments. So the major I'd say what I would really like you to take away from me talking about Russia today is the fact that it's incredibly diverse. So if you look at the Russian territory, it's the largest country in the world, and it's influenced by so many different factors. There are actually 200 different ethnical groups living in Russia. I mean, imagine Europe, imagine difference between Western and Eastern Europe, and the diversity within one country, like the diversity within, say, one France, for instance. And so if you are looking at Russia, it's absolutely not a homogeneous territory. It's very diverse. So the first thing that is very important for us to know is that the internet penetration and the e-commerce activity is much higher in the larger major cities. So the first major cities of Russia, the two biggest economically most important cities in Russia, can someone help me say which cities are those? Moscow, right? And another one? St. Petersburg, okay, very good. So can you imagine that about 30% of all e-commerce activity is actually coming from Moscow and its surroundings? And about 50% of Moscow population have been shopping online, and about 35% of the population of St. Petersburg has been shopping online. So what about the rest? But I mean, of course, it's a very large territory, and there are other major cities, but what we've seen with e-commerce players and also companies in general in Russia is they tend to establish their business in the major cities first because they have a larger online audience there. So say the population of Moscow is about 20 million, the population of St. Petersburg is about 5 million. Combined is like, you know, a solid European country. I mean, it's larger than the population of Sweden. So basically targeting the cities first has proven to be successful for some players. And also, of course, the factors such as the purchasing power, the economic status, you know, people who have good jobs and have, you know, attractive salaries usually live in larger cities. Also, what we've found from various researches about the online population behavior is that people tend to be higher educated. So there is about 98% of penetration, online penetration among the youth between 20 and 30. That's very high. But then, the older the consumer gets, the lower is the internet penetration. So as opposed to, I guess, the Western countries, when you are dealing with a mature consumer in Russia, and also you'll see in most emerging markets, the consumer is very young. And also we have to know that the levels of education are also really different online. So basically, the researches have been done on the distribution of the education and the correlation between education and online penetration. And the penetration seems to be much higher among people with university degree. It's about 80% for something of an equivalent of the something between bachelor and master's degree, and it's actually less than 20% among people who have a degree that is compatible with the high school. So you also get a scope of the consumer, how they're like. So they're probably living in a major city, and they're higher educated, and they're a bit younger, and they also really like social networks. So Russians are the most active social networkers in the world. Do you know what is the okay, well, that's on a slide, but still, the most popular Russian websites are not search engines, are actually social networks, and they're homegrown. However, what we've seen is that if you look at that screenshot on the upper left, you'll see that Russia is already actually getting a lot of users. There are a lot of Facebook users online, and this is a little bit blurry, but those are the numbers of the active users in millions, and it's the numbers from 2013. So it's great news for all social networks, not just from the homegrown, Vkontakte and Odnoklassniki, but also for Facebook, for Google+, for Twitter. Social networks are very popular among Russian population because traditionally people are used to the media that is state-owned, and I guess social networks are considered as this alternative source of information. So it's very important for people to be able to exchange information in a different way than just the traditional channels. So here you see the interface of Vkontakte.ru. That's the most popular site of Russia. And what you can do here is, apart from the familiar interface, I guess it's really very general kind of social network interface, you can see here that people can also, apart from joining groups, they can also collect news, and they can also upload and listen to music, and they can watch videos, which is quite interesting. So can you imagine that you can access a social network where you watch videos online, and you usually don't have to think of finding the streaming, paying for that. It's very accessible, and Russians love watching videos. So you can see that. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a source of that, so apologies for that. But you can already see that YouTube is the largest and most popular channel for online videos in Russia, which is great news. But also you can see that Russia compilations has become a thing for YouTube users. You can, like, when you watch this really funny videos of people climbing, very high buildings or doing some incredibly dangerous things, you will find that a lot of those videos are actually in Russian, because Russians are uploading videos to YouTube channel as well. So watching videos is very popular, and also image ads are quite popular. Russia has the largest online audience in the world. Well, not online audience in the world, the Google Display Network. So it's also very popular for the large player businesses entering Russia to use the GDN network. So when do you want to target? It's been mentioned before by someone yesterday in the presentation that it's very important to target your advertising in a timely manner. So also take into account the seasonality. So because of that, I wanted you to see a few of the important holidays in Russia. Actually, right now is a crucial period for you to advertise in Russia. It's spring. So first, it's going to be the 23rd of February, and that is the Men's Day, right? It's actually very funny. It has its roots in the old Soviet Red Army celebration. So historically it was the creation of the Red Army, but it kind of reinvented itself after the fall of the communism, and people are still celebrating it, giving presents to their husbands, to their brothers, to their fathers. So I would give a present to Fedor, for instance, as my peer for the 23rd of February. And then I would expect him to give me a present on the 8th of March, because 8th of March is huge for Russians. It's actually, in a way, it's like a Valentine's Day, so it's supposed to be very romantic. So people are, giving women flowers and perfumes, but it's also, I will also probably expect a present from my brother and my dad. So it's not only, it's not quite the same as the Valentine's Day. But what you need to know is that Russians actually shop online, and there is a lot of, there are a lot more searches for gifts. So people research to get ideas of the gifts online, and of course they're increasingly more active in actually ordering and purchasing. So, and I don't need to walk you through all the holidays, but I just mentioned a couple. So the 9th of May is the Victory Day. In most of Europe, it's the Liberation Day, but for Russia, it was a patriotic war, so it's still, until today, it's called the Victory Day, and you can actually see the old veterans marching on the streets of all cities in Russia, and you can also see there's a huge parade. This one is 2013 on the Red Square, so it's pretty much very broadly celebrated. And also the 1st of September is a huge thing, and it's also crucial for the retailers, because people are buying things for their kids, because it's considered as a very important day for children in Russia. And of course, the Russian Orthodox Christmas is not on the 25th of December, but it's in January. And then there is also 14th of January. So there is a very long break from the 31st, which is celebrated much more than in Europe. And then there is a 7 days break. Then there is the 7th of January, the Russian Orthodox Christmas Day. And then on the 14th, they also celebrate the old style New Year according to the old calendar that's still adopted by the Russian Orthodox Church. And so it's a really long holiday in a way. All right, so going to the summary, what I really want you to remember from this session is that Central and Eastern Europe, it's a huge opportunity. It's basically matching Western Europe in terms of online penetration. There is a set of countries that are still very poor and developing, and there is a set of countries that are already caught up. So depending on where you want to go, there might be endless opportunities there. Russia is the largest online population in Eastern Europe and also the second largest among the BRIC countries. And it actually experienced a quite good e-commerce development in terms of the emerging markets. It was 24% last year, 24% year on year, which is actually nearly as much as Brazil, but it's still, full of roadblocks. So understanding these factors, these market factors, and also the specific cultural consumer behaviors will help you to design a suitable strategy to enter and to be successful in those markets. So that was it, and do you have any questions? I guess Peter can join me up here, and we can. Or actually, I will go down there. So maybe we can. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I just want to make sure that everyone heard. On the 23rd of February, I'm getting a present. Right. I have a room of 80 witnesses, so I'm going to hold you to it.
Yeah.
Just have a question here on the right.
Yep.
Sorry I had to ask that question, but I was wondering, what are you going to do to win actually Russian market? Because Google is not like having the large market share over there.
All right, yeah, that's a very good question. It's something that, look, I'm not going to talk about market shares, but what I can say, and something that I should have probably mentioned when I was talking about the mobile adoption, so there are homegrown players there, right? And it's about 50-50 when you talk about how many people are using Yandex, how many people are using Google. But what we've seen over the past 2 years is that Google is actually growing in terms of users, while Yandex is losing the users. So this is the data accessible online, and I would be happy to walk you through that as well. And Google is actually already bigger on mobile, so that's a big thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate on the fact that there's the big Y on the market. Everyone knows it. It's the #1 search engine with a large impression share. The kind of stuff that Valerie took you through did give you a perspective that there's not a lot of association between, for example, YouTube and Google necessarily. So there are many ways of, let's say, different market shares that you can argue about Google, etc. But yeah, there's no denying it. There's the big Y, and it's going to stay there for a while for sure. Anyone else? Don't be shy. There we go.
Do you have any stats about the share of cash on delivery on the market, like 80% cash on delivery, or do you have any idea about that?
Do you want to?
Yeah. So cash on delivery is about 50%. Micropayments are getting bigger and bigger in Russia. Google Wallet, Yandex Wallet, PayPal is kind of there present, not as big as in the US or Germany, of course, but it's on the market. Cash on delivery is something around 50%.
Yeah.
Very interesting, especially relevant to maybe tech and retail clients, is that as you've seen, a lot of internet penetration is in the big cities, St. Petersburg, Moscow, in the western part of Russia. A lot of companies, what they do right now is try to find alternative sources, alternative delivery places. Helsinki, Estonia, Tallinn, and have actually local companies to deliver using their own local warehouses to Russia through European markets. So that's where, again, payment methods come into play, and there are more alternatives.
I have one question about one of the slides I saw earlier. You showed countries like Ukraine and Kazakhstan and the Russian-speaking users there.
Yeah.
Can you target them in the same way with Russian language? Because I know there's some differences, but minor differences in the languages. Or do you say you should adapt the website to Ukrainian or?
Well, when you're speaking about Ukraine in particular, of course there is Ukrainian language. It's a language. It's not the same as Russian. And what I'm talking about is addressing the Russian language speakers in those markets. So of course they will have their own local languages, but you can, depending again on your business and how you want to market it and your offering, I guess you can target the languages purely, basically. Did I answer your question? Okay, great. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Hi. If you take the case of a travel site, so thankfully doesn't have this delivery issue, but this issue around aversion to sort of paying online, how are the big travel sites getting around that, and what payment methods are popular with them?
Yeah. Peter, do you want to share your insights with that?
So I think it again goes back to the biggest obstacle when it comes to traveling for Russian users. It's visa. Visas are quite important, so still a lot of Russians do refer to go to travel agencies to book kind of a package deal with hotel and flights, and that's where, again, the preferred or the most common payment method is in person. When it comes down to online payments, travel is seeing the biggest growth when it comes down to credit card payments. It's inevitable. Also, what's been very, very preferred and very big is companies like Booking.com, Hotels.com doing pay upon arrival to the hotels, which is clearly the way to attract Russian users. Yes, please.
I noticed on the map that you had a large Polish population in Ireland.
Yeah, do you want me to scroll back?
No, I don't need to.
Okay, yeah.
So I read this thing that there were 44 million first language speakers Spanish in America and 78 million, it was their second language. So we had the idea, right, let's target America with our Spanish sites. So if you see that, are you suggesting that you'd target Polish ads in Ireland, landing on a Polish site or a UK site? Because I tried it in America and failed. I've still got to talk why that is, but what are you suggesting you do with that information?
So what was exactly the experience that you had in America targeting the Spanish speakers?
We tried one particular product, a heated clothing range in the winter.
Right.
It might have been tough because a lot of them are in southern, so it might not have been the best one to trial, but basically it was a very bad conversion rate. And we tried cross-testing it, one landing them on an English-speaking site.
Right.
And then we had an auto-translated site, which is difficult because we have Spanish customer service and stuff. But we didn't do the full integration. We had trouble with currency changes and things like this, so maybe we didn't do it fully, but the experience wasn't good. Some of that responsibility is ours. But it's just because I saw you do that. What were you suggesting these Polish speakers, so you detect that their browser or their language is set to Polish?
Right.
Are you landing them on an English site, would you do a Polish site?
Well, you know what, it really depends on what kind of audience you want to target. Who is your ideal consumer? What would they need? In this case, it was the warm clothing.
I want to sell them something, yeah.
Yeah, for instance, so it really depends on what you want them to buy from you. And I'd say, in a lot of cases, you can target, definitely in Ireland, you can target Polish users in English. They will search in English. But depending on what kind of product it is, you might also expand your audience by adding an extra language to it. And I think the good way is to experiment with it, but at the same time set the right expectations. So basically, we were talking about the staged approach to entering a new market. So from testing something without fully localizing the website to their language, and just testing something in English or translating with Google tools. So it really is. It should be part of the overall advertising strategy. And if you have a particular case, you can always talk to your account manager at Google, and we can take a look. We have Polish expert advisors that can take a look at your particular marketing campaign and advise you what should be done in that case. So whether you should do it or not, and how exactly. Does that answer your question a little bit?
A bit. I'm still not clear whether you're saying you would do Polish. I'd be surprised if Polish people were searching Polish words, looking for a Polish ad in Ireland. And what would they be expecting as an experience on my site? Just an option to auto-translate to Polish.
Yeah.
If that's really what I'm looking for. But
right.
I'll chat to the team because I'm looking at Poland anyway.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I guess the message I wanted to send with that particular map, it was to show that there are many niche communities in different countries. So I'm not advising to target the Polish people in Ireland, definitely not based on just some general information. I would really consider it case to case, because we have to be careful, of course. At the end, it's about the consumer and not that much even about the language or the location they're at. Yeah. Okay.
One more question? Two, one.
Out of that 18 billion you mentioned, what is the percentage of physical goods on that 18 billion?
That's a very good question. I don't know. I will be happy to chat to you to give you this information after the presentation.
Let's throw in the tools presentation that we did in the morning. Consumer Barometer is a great provider of those kind of answers, because you can see split between offline and online purchases made overall across all the industries. So you can have a look there. If I'm not mistaken, it's something around 18 to 20% is done online overall.
But we can take a look at it together if you like. So do you have any more questions?
I think if anyone, we're still at the stands there,
yeah.
So we can take your questions one by one individually also if needed.
All right.
Thank you very much, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you.